All right. Welcome everyone to the season 10 podcast talk back with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. I'm so glad to have you live with me on tonight. We have a wonderful panel of guests from our season 10 podcast episodes, which covered the month of June, July, and August. We took a break in September. Next week we'll go. We will we will proceed with our season 11. Yes, season 11. I can't believe that we've had 11 seasons of the Harmonize Your Life podcast. And so next week we will begin season 11 with our guest, Dr. Shaniqua Walker Barnes. She will kick us off in the month of October as we start out season 11 of this podcast. But we always take a break in between seasons, and we invite guests from the previous season to come in with us so that we can talk about their podcast episode with you. And so I want you to tell a neighbor and tell a friend that Dr. Tony is live tonight. Her guests are live with you tonight. You can get your questions together and dialogue with us in the comments. We're going to take your questions and dialogue and interact with you, engage with you tonight in our podcast conversation. So listen, I'm going to bring our guests in just a moment, but I want to make sure that we got enough people on tonight. So I need to see those numbers go up. I need you to tell somebody that Dr. Tony is live. Share it on your Facebook page, share it on your Instagram page, share it on your Twitter page, and let everybody know that we are in our live podcast talk back. This is the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast. And we are doing our live podcast talk back. As I have been sharing with you, that I was going to invite our guests in so we can talk and we can dialogue about some of these issues and kick the can around and look at it from different perspectives. And so I got men and women coming into the studio with us on tonight, and it's going to be a wonderful dialogue, a wonderful conversation. Let me see if y'all coming in here with me. I need to see more people on with me. I need to see more of you all getting in the studio with us tonight, because it's going to be a wonderful dialogue and a wonderful conversation. So if you're on with us, let us know you're on by putting something in the comments, saying hello to us, saying good evening to us, and letting us know that you are ready to talk, you're ready to dialogue. And we're going to dig deeper into some of these issues that are impacting our community, our overall health, our overall wellness, and our ability to live a harmonious lifestyle depends on some of the things that we do and some of the strategies that we put in place in order to live and be whole, spirit, soul, and body. So we'll be right back with our guests right after this. All right, y'all. We are live on YouTube and Facebook tonight, and I'm so glad to have this august body of panelists and persons who are going to talk back to us tonight about these issues of self-care, health, and wellness. I'm glad to have my husband, my partner in crime, Bishop Alvarado, Dr. Jonathan Alvarado. He said to me earlier, he said, am I Bishop Alvarado tonight or Dr. Alvarado? I said, you can be who you want to be. It doesn't matter. So
you gotta ask.
So you can go in and out. You can go in and out, Bishop. You can be Bishop. You can be Doctor. Yeah. So dialogue. We're going to dialogue tonight. Thank you for being our co-host in the month of June. as we dealt with issues around men of color, and health and wellness as relates to
Sure.
our men. And so I always in the month of June dedicate this podcast. I know that this podcast is primarily dedicated to women of color, but we also concerned because self-care includes our men. And so we always want to make sure that we address issues around health and wellness as it relates to the men in our lives, the men in our churches, the men in our communities, the men on our jobs, our husbands,
Absolutely.
our sons, our brothers, our partners, just our nephews, everybody that makes up our community. And so I'm grateful that you always see count it not robbery to come on with me in the month of June, Bishop, and help me co-host conversations around self-care, health, and wellness for our men, for particularly men of color. And then this year, we have a very special friend who's on with us tonight, who was also in our June podcast conversation, Pastor Derwin Davis,
Absolutely.
senior pastor of the Reach Church, right? I'm gonna say it right.
You're saying it right. You're saying it right.
Church in Latonia, Georgia. He is a friend and brother, colleague in the city, pastoral colleague, and has a wonderful testimony,
Sure.
around his own fitness journey, his own health and wellness journey. I'll let him share a little bit about that. But he's made a real big milestone this week.
Absolutely. Yes.
A goal,
Yes.
a health goal, a fitness goal, a wellness goal. And I'm so proud of you, Pastor Derwin, for meeting your goal and probably exceeding what you even thought you would be able to do in this time. And I'll let you share what that goal was that you just reached. I don't want to steal your thunder. I'll let you share that. And then my soror and my sister, Tisa Smart Washington, is on with us tonight. And Tisa has a very interesting, we did an interesting dialogue around the issue of Black Girl Magic with Tisa. And I shared with her offline that we got some interesting feedback from her session, and that I'm going to share a little bit of, and just we'll tease that out a little bit more tonight, as well as she is working through and studying this issue of Black Girl Magic and what that means for us, and in all iterations of it. Okay. So I just want to get us going by inviting Dr. Jonathan Alvarado to just say a word to us tonight, or just what's on your heart,
Sure.
your let's see, opening comments or thoughts.
Well, it's my great privilege to be back on the Harmonize Your Life podcast. It's a joy to have the conversation and to be able to come to the table and to engage with those men and women that you have on this podcast, because this issue of health and wellness is not going anywhere. I think the awareness of that is bringing us to some greater levels of impact and influence in the broader society. Because you know, the longer you live, the more impact you can make. You can, oftentimes, unless there's martyrdom involved, like a Dr. King or a Jesus Christ, whose their early death adds to their impact. But in the normal scheme of things, the longer you live, the more impact you're going to be able to have. Yeah. And so this idea of living long, living well, living with purpose, living with destiny, living healthily, there's nothing worse than outliving your money or outliving your health.
Yeah.
That God is calling us in this hour to raise up generations, particularly those of us that are African American and Afro-Hispanic and Black and brown people, with a higher mortality rate and a lower average lifespan than our white counterparts. I think it's extremely important what you're doing, that you've been called for this time, that you provide leadership in this time. You were just at Candler School of Theology lecturing this afternoon on this very topic.
Yeah.
Because many of us as preachers, the average pastoral tenure right now is only 5 years in the United States.
Yeah, wow.
And out.
Wow.
And pastors have higher incidences of everything, both on the physical and emotional spectrum, but those things also lead to higher incidences of alcoholism, bankruptcy, infidelities, and all kinds of stuff. And all of those things, to me, are under the umbrella of self-care. How do we manage spirit,
Wow.
soul, body, family, finances, and future? How do we manage all those things? And you provide a roadmap and a guidebook and a forum for us to be able to dialogue on those matters and to be able to bring those things into greater clarity. And if we'll make the commitment, I believe the Lord will come alongside us and give us the kind of impetus and the kind of opportunity to be able to bring those things to bear. So I'm glad to be here tonight. Glad to be here with my sister and my brother. And I'm looking forward to all that will transpire in Jesus' name.
Well, good, good, good. All right. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, Dr. Jonathan Alvarado. Thank you. And yes, I was today at Candler School of Theology. I was invited to be the course that I taught, that I was guest lecturing for today. Is the course itself is entitled Spirituality and Health.
Wow.
And so I, that was right up my alley. And so I was really,
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
they have a whole course, and a lot of the students in the course are MDiv students, MTS students, Master of Theological Studies or Master of Divinity students. We had some who were public health students, some who were chaplains going the chaplaincy route. And we even had one gentleman in the class who was majoring in ethics from Emory University. And so very diverse group, men and women, people of color, majority culture there as well. And even some international students were part of the class today. And so, yeah, and the question that I was asked to answer was, how does our overall health and wellness impact our ability to do the work that we're called to do?
Wow. Wow.
And so I just talked about that whole idea of holistic approach to living, and how it does matter how we take care of our temple, our mental health, our financial health, and the whole holistic approach.
Sure.
So that we're not just focused on our work, but then dying in the process, and not really fulfilling the mandate of God on our lives, because we are not able to even carry out the work, because we're not physically fit or emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, mentally healthy, or whatever, financially and otherwise, relationally, occupationally well. And I just looked at all those aspects and talked about the whole integration model of living.
Outstanding.
Wow.
Yeah. So Pastor Derwin,
Yes.
give us some introductory comments.
Well, I'm so excited to be here on tonight. Again, Dr. Tony Alvarado, thanks so much for the invite, and Bishop Jonathan Alvarado, thanks for all of your leadership over the years and encouragement from afar. I'm extremely excited about Harmonize Your Life. Thanks for inviting me back in June. And I have, according to this weekend, I set a goal in June. After I reached one goal, that I wanted to be a 250-pound loss mark at October 1st. And I literally met that weight goal literally the last date of September. And I have been declaring that it's going to be a September to remember. So to be 525 pounds and to get on the scale and see 274.
Oh my God.
Like
Say to me.
an amazing goal.
So you have lost 250 pounds.
I have lost over 250
That's
pounds.
251. What you say?
That's a whole person.
So
Man,
I thought I was going to, I said, I was going, I just want to be 250 pounds, just 250 pounds. So I'm less than 25 pounds away from that. But then I was like, well, when I hit that, I was like, I'm going to go down because I found out through insurance and some other things that the magic weight number at my height is 230. But I was like, 230 would be 295. So I might as well go for 300. So now we're going to 225. And we'll get there. But I never imagined, I don't remember ever being this size in my adult life.
Wow, Pastor. Wow. And how long did it take you to lose the weight?
So I call it it's crazy because I go back to the weight loss journey and I start really looking from 2007, but I'll tell you when it got serious for me was September the 11th, 2020. That's when I was as an educator. I left school, still being a bivocational pastor. I left school and had to go by the funeral home on my way to a wedding rehearsal. So typical pastoring stuff. You leave school, do work, and I didn't make it. I was at Piedmont Fed from an ambulance call that they thought I was having a heart attack and a stroke. And nothing makes you live like looking at death.
Wow. Nothing makes you live like looking at death. Wow.
Nothing. I'm mid-30s and thinking about you got a heart attack and a stroke, and you're seeing doctors move around the hospital at a fast pace, but it's slowing your mind. And that moment there was the moment that when I tell you everything started changing from that. So I literally, the life I lived at that moment, September 20, I could look at everything, whether it's pastorally, relationally, financially, occupationally, everything is totally different, but it's directly from the moment. September 2020.
Wow. So 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Incredible.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And that changed your life.
Everything. Nothing makes you live like looking at death.
Nothing makes you live like looking at death. If you're on here with us tonight, you ought to type that in the comments. Nothing makes you live like looking at death. That's good right there. That's good, Pastor. And so over these last 3 years, you have set this as a goal to change your lifestyle around.
So from September 2020, I lost 100 pounds. And in October 2022, I decided to have weight loss surgery. So I lost 100 on my own through eating healthy, exercise. And then while I improved drastically, my doctors, if I can give it a metaphor, I was heading in the wrong direction, approximately like 75 miles per hour. But after my losing at least, 80 pounds at that time, my doctor was like, well, we slowed down. We're not going 75, but we're still headed, 10 to 15 pounds, 10 to 15 miles in the wrong direction, metaphorically. And that's when they asked me about weight loss surgery. And I considered it. And because I left education and go in the mortgage industry, where education didn't cover the surgery, mortgages, it did. And I was going to the doctor so much that the deductible was met. So I literally got surgery for $255. And the rest was history.
Wow. And we'll come back to that because I want to ask you about that because, some people, there are people who feel like weight loss surgery, they want to do, they lose weight and some people look down on weight loss surgery and then others say it's a bet, it was the best thing for them. We'll come back to that. I'm going to come back to that and just see where we are. Tisa.
I'm here.
You are indeed.
Looking good too.
Thank you.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I declare you look like you lost weight too.
Oh, well, thank you. I have. Thank you. I
can see it in your face.
I am excited to be here again. Thank you for having me back. Since we had our conversation around Black Girl Magic, I have had confirmation after confirmation that this is where I'm supposed to be at this point in my life. So I am excited to have the opportunity to come back and just talk a little bit more about this phenomenon and the impact that it can have on our lives if we don't put it in its rightful place. I think more than anything, a lot of these conversations are around, there's nothing wrong with these things. We just have to make sure that we put them in their rightful place in our lives.
Okay. So yeah, I definitely want to share with you some of the feedback that I got from your session. Good stuff, but maybe needing a little bit more clarity around what you meant, what you mean by it, and how do we preserve our own celebration of who we are as Black women while looking at things that could be injurious to how we approach life.
Well, let me just say this. I am excited that there's conversation happening around this.
Sure.
You know, I don't put myself out there as the expert, you know, but I think it's important for us to have open, honest dialogue about these issues, because that's the only way that we can come to some consensus, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that if you disagree with me, that's even better, because I love to hear your perspective. I'd love to see your point of view. And maybe there's information that you can enlighten that you can enlighten me with, you know.
Right.
So I'm excited about all of it.
Yeah, and I shared with someone, I said, well, you know, she's working on a PhD and nobody's doing a PhD that doesn't look for a good argument. I mean, what good is it? What good is the study if we can't, you know, critique it or push back on it or look at it at different points and that kind of thing. So yeah. It's good.
Okay, you have to catch me up. So the PhD is in, and the study is on, and so where and the whole thumbnail sketch of what does it mean when you say Black Girl Magic, so that way I'll understand and be on the same page with you.
Okay, so I am a doctoral student in the Global Leadership program at Troy University.
Okay.
And just a little bit of background. I started this program in 2021, and then had the opportunity to complete my master's in public administration at Harvard. And so I took a break and I completed the program at Harvard. And on my first day of school, I said, I'm not going to go back to the PhD program. And on my last day of school, I said, oh, I'm absolutely going back to the PhD program, because research informs practice. And a lot of times people will say that this is not an issue because the research does not support it. But the reason that the research does not support it is because there's no one doing this type of research on these issues that impact us.
I love what you said. The research supports practice.
Or informs the practice.
And in a very real way, practice informs the research.
It should.
Particularly if you're in as a participant observer within the communities that you're studying, then it's going to be a mutually informing kind of cyclical event. Because, I mean, I'm an advocate for women at every level. And I said it publicly the other day. Black women have saved the United States politically in at least two of the most recent political elections that we've had. And so if it had not been for that, but there is a huge, enormous burden that you all are bearing by reason of that. And historically, Black women have been not only the backbone of our African American culture, but you've been the moral compass of the culture in and of itself. Black women have taught the entire United States throughout our history how to forgive.
Right.
Yes,
Black
absolutely.
women.
Right.
And so when I say, so my argument is that Black Girl Magic is an evolution of Strong Black Woman schema. And really at its core, all of it goes back to slavery, when we are expected as Black women to be selfless and serving and give without expectation of receiving from the community that we give so much to.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what I want to ask you is, and I agree with you, it does, to me, it, because we have been, when you've been considered the workforce of a nation, for lack of a better term, the workforce, because we had to work, we had to produce, right? And then because our men were stripped away from us, oftentimes in slavery, our men were stripped away from us. So we had to make up the difference in a lot of ways in the Black family because of slavery, because of the criminal justice system where many of our men have been locked up, right? And so we've had to make up the difference for it. And so when you say that it's rooted in slavery, say more about that.
So the Strong Black Woman schema, and it's well established in the academic literature, that especially in the workplace, Black women are not seen as leaders. We are seen as really good workers, and that we are to work without expectation of recognition of the work that we do. I think
Wow.
outside of the work that we do, the amount of sacrifice that we have to make is often goes unseen. So as we discussed in our last podcast, sometimes we have to fight to get access to the very spaces that are given to our counterparts without question. And so when we end up in those rooms, they assume that we have done what they have done to get there. And they don't even understand that for me to even be sitting here with you, for
Yes.
me as a Black woman to be sitting next to you as a student at Harvard, I had to do things unimaginable.
Right.
Unimaginable. And I'm still having to prove myself because the expectation is always that the work is for others and we don't take time to care for ourselves. And we have to get to the point where we understand that taking care of ourselves is the foundation of taking care of others.
Exactly. Exactly. Self-care is not only a gift to me, but it's a gift to everyone that I'm called to serve. As a matter of fact, I cannot serve you if I've not served me, if I've not taken care of myself. So what do you say, Tisa? I'm going to put up a couple of comments. Juanita said that your podcast took pressure off. The podcast with Tisa took pressure off, celebrating my accomplishments as a Black woman without unrealistic comparisons. What do you say to that?
I'm moved. I'm moved. Actually, can you maybe someone else chime in for a second while I kind of process through this?
Sure. Yeah. So Juanita, thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
And I agree with Juanita in that we often compare ourselves to one another, and there is this unrealistic expectation that we sometimes put on ourselves because we see what other people are doing. And social media, like we talked about on the podcast with you, has made it worse because like you said this on the podcast. You said when we were growing up, the Joneses were only next door. And we might know what the Joneses were doing. But now with social media, everybody is the Joneses. In other words, we get to see what everybody's doing all over the world, all over the country. And so then we tend to look and see what they went on vacation, or they bought this, or they started this business, or they're doing this ministry. And sometimes we begin to feel like, hey, I'm not producing, I'm not doing anything because I'm not doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. I think this comment has touched me because I worry sometimes if this is the work that I should be doing. And when I see comments like this, I understand that I'm not the only one that is, feeling this pressure to produce at all times without saying, I'm a little tired, I'm a little weary, I just need a break, and I'll get back to it tomorrow.
And might I add, I just want to, I don't think I shared this, Tisa, but for those that watched the podcast, I did do a formal introduction of everyone on the podcast. This is the podcast Talk Back. For those of you all who are coming in just now, I'm doing a podcast Talk Back with guests from season 10. Tisa Smart Washington was one of our guests in the month of August, and we talked about deconstructing the Black Girl Magic. She's working on a project where she's deconstructing Black Girl Magic and just looking at it, not deconstructing it in the sense of saying it's worthless, it's not for us, but looking at maybe some of the injurious ways that we have applied that mantra or that thinking or that way of living and being in the world. But Tisa is the tax commissioner in the county where Bishop Alvarado and I live, in Rockdale County. She is a government official, elected officer in our community. And she's a mother, a wife. She just finished a program at Harvard, and now she's working on her PhD at Troy University. So she's talking not in a vacuum, she's talking from experience.
Yes.
She's talking from experience. So I just wanted to throw that out.
That experience, I think, is extremely important in the fact that while the conversation is, the whole idea and the umbrella is health and wellness and how do I take care of self and how do I maintain a sense of holistic self-care. But and specifically when you start talking about Black Girl Magic, obviously for women and for Black women at that. But let me say something to you. There's a whole lot of pressure to produce across the board. And
Yeah.
it's different. But you all, again, become our tutors. You become our exemplars. You become those that guide us in that process, because the expectation for not only your personal production, but then also, and we're talking about slavery, Jim and Jane Crow, antebellum America, all the development of African-American life and presence where we are. You guys were not just, Black women were not just expected to work and produce, but you were expected to produce producers who work and produce. And
Yeah.
so part of your work was producing workers. And that
Yes.
and to do
Yeah.
it solo, because the commitments, though love was obviously a factor in slave relationships, and though marital relationships and familial relationships were valid and were greatly and highly revered in our particular culture with African spirituality that undergirded the slave phenomenon, the fact of the matter is, sociologically, socioculturally, y'all did it by yourselves, because as soon as that Black man could be of benefit to somebody else on another plantation, he was drawn away.
Yeah.
And particularly for his ability to reproduce children and impregnate
Exactly.
as many women.
And
So
then
you all,
often, Black women were having babies for the slave master. We were nursing babies for the slave
That's exactly right.
slave master, and we were producing babies or having babies for men we didn't even love.
Yes.
You know, or were in a relationship with. It was just a matter of production. And so that whole idea of producing has always been a part of the ethos of what it means to be a Black woman. And so
when I think of this idea of Black Girl Magic, when it comes to me, and as a man, what I know about it, you can put in a thimble. It'll take me 18 seconds to tell everything I know about it. I think of Simone Biles.
oh yeah.
Think of Serena Williams. But see, that's fast forward.
Uh-huh. And that's right. And to give you some context, Bishop Alvarado, the whole Black Girl Magic hashtag came along during the time when Serena and Venus were competing and coming under a lot of criticism and things of that nature. And Tisa, you can say more about that because you did the study on it.
Yeah, it was actually a hashtag that was created by Kashana Williams Thompson. Excuse me. She's a social media influencer, and she came up with the hashtag Black Girls Are Magic, and it has evolved into Black Girl Magic. And it was really to celebrate the accomplishments of Black women. They're just celebrate Black women for being Black women. And especially at a time where, especially dark-skinned Black women were not considered attractive. We don't meet the standard beauty standards of in these United States. And so it was a hashtag in celebration of all that we have done. And I think that that has its place. And it's a spectrum. It's the spectrum of womanhood, Black womanhood in the world, because it has reached around the globe. But I think that we need to have conversations about how it shows up in our individual lives so that we understand when we are proclaiming this. I have proclaimed I'm Black Girl Magic. I've done it. But there's another side of it.
That's the point that I was getting to.
Yeah,
because it seems to me that those of us that celebrate it, like when I look at a Simone Biles, who is this gymnast that's beyond comparison. And I grew up in the era of Nadia Comaneci and all these Russian gymnasts, and so when I'm looking at this Black girl that's excelling beyond all of it, so that to me is Black Girl Magic. But I also watched her go through a mental detachment and dysphoria behind doing the thing that she loved because of the pressure to produce.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering then if my celebration of her and calling it Black Girl Magic is having the injurious effect of contributing to the pressure that's upon her to constantly produce, and perhaps produce for a nation or for an industry that never regards Black girls in the way that it should.
And Rob Bowen says Black Girl Magic is the everyday woman too, right?
Yes.
Everyday
Yes.
woman. So, and Roz, if you will put in the comment just a little bit more about what you mean by that, I'd love for us to tease that out. I want to just say this, Tisa. So some of the feedback that I got from my self-care group was while I understood, I think where you were coming from in terms of the idea that I think everything has a dark side to it. I think everything has is good. It has and some good points to it, but then taken to its furthest conclusion, or maybe out of balance or out of harmony. That's my word. Then it can become injurious. Like a strength can be a weakness as well, right? And so when you say what do you say to I lost her. Oh Lord, let me get her back. All right, Roz, I want you to come give me your comment. Let me get Tisa back in the studio. We lost her. I'll get her back. But what I want to say, as Tisa's when she comes back in, I want to press her just a little bit based on some of the feedback that we got, and we'll come back to Tisa as soon as I can get her back in the studio. Pastor Derwin,
Yes.
talk to us a little bit more about how you see all of this, and do you see this pressure to produce in Black men?
The pressure to produce in the African American society is constant. I think it's an under pressure, an undertone, and it is an overtone. Our whole culture is produced at whatever cost, and often the costs are hidden. I think this is where our mental health and our physical health even comes to the forefront, because how does producing impact our ability to do what we do in the form of our health? As a matter of fact, there's many people would say, because I'm producing, I can't be healthy. Or because of the pressure and things that are going on, I don't have the time to work out. I don't have the time to eat right, or I don't have the finances to do this, or the stress or the coping mechanisms. It's painful that as I started dealing with my health and looking at ministry, pastors, we're some of the most unhealthy individuals ever.
Yeah.
What also gave me a checkup on pastoring is I was overweight. I was 500 pounds at the time, but they needed to put me on some medicine, and they asked me to go to a cardiologist just as precautionary. But the cardiologist did a visit for me and literally was discharging me out of the door. But he said, "Hold on, I forgot to ask you, what do you do for a living?" And as soon as I told him I was a teacher at that time, but I said, "I'm also a pastor." When he heard the words pastor come out of my mouth, it was like a cuss word to him as a cardiologist, because he immediately turned around to the nurse and ordered 4 tests, and I had to do 2 more tests before I left the cardiologist.
Wow.
And I asked him, "What is going on?" He said, "Between everyone feeding and the stress that pastors carry, pastors are my number one patients."
Absolutely.
And here I am as a 30-year-old. Yeah, here I am as a 30-year-old who was sent to the cardiologist as a precautionary visit just because of the size of my weight, who was literally walking out of the door, saw I had to get an echocardiogram, and they needed additional blood work, and ordered 2 more tests because I was a pastor. That was a wake-up call to the pressure.
Yeah.
And anyone, whether it's pastoring or anything that we do, that gets back to the whole Black girl magic. As an African American that produces in this culture, there is a pressure that cannot be heard or articulated or even interpreted by other cultures. And the other part about this is our pressure amongst ourselves to perform and to do and to show up really makes our abuse habitual unknowingly. So I'm struggling with a biblical principle of applying it to my life, that my cup runneth over. We preach it, We shout it, we say it, it's a common statement, but how do we live it?
How do we live it? Mhm.
Because if my cup runs over, that means I focus on me being full before anyone get any piece of liquid, straw, sip from a saucer. And many times we are taught that we pour out while our cup is empty. We show up while our
While our
cup
cup is empty.
is it our magic? Is that we're known as pouring and being great liquid to everyone else while our cup is empty? Because that's been our story. And is that the magic that we call that? Oh my God, regardless of where we are and how we've been, we've shown up and done things.
Now, let me say, as a Pentecostal, the enchanted nature of spirituality to me necessitates areas of our emptiness, for his strength is made perfect in our weakness.
In our weakness, yes.
And so, I mean, what Tisa's talking about, the reason that it's important to me to hear what Black girl magic is, to hear the comments about the everyday woman as opposed to whom we call the superlatives, to hear you talk about the pressure cross-culturally, because I'm on my way to Yale. At the end of this month, I got to lecture at Yale University. I'm lecturing there as I was invited, particularly because I'm an Afro-Hispanic Pentecostal bishop, for a conference on apostolicity. It's history, it's ecumenism, and it's all egghead, nerdy kind of stuff. So I'm going to be.
We don't know what they mean. He knows.
I'll be presenting, but here it is. When I stand up, I'm going to be the only light-skinned Black Pentecostal Episcopate in the room. They'll be there from the Netherlands. They'll be there from England. They'll be there from various parts of the United States and Canada. Mostly Westerners. But when I stand up, they will look to me as a representative voice for a vast, pluriform, heterodox people. And I feel the weight of that now, even in my preparation. Mm-hmm. So the reality of the matter is,
Bishop, how do you prepare for the weight of that?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the purpose of me making the transparent statement. The idea is this conversation here, tapping into whatever magic exists, to be able to fill in some of those gaps, to be able to stand up in authenticity, to be able to stand up not only in persona Christi, in the stead of Christ, but also in persona ecclesiae, in the stead of the church that I represent, not the localized church, but all the people of color that subscribe to a way of being in the world that is similar to mine, forged out of similar experiences.
So the question would be, Bishop, is not so much, yes, you're definitely going to do that. You're definitely going to stand and represent, but Ross says, is it magic or grace? I don't know.
Synonyms. Those are synonyms.
Is it magic or grace? I don't know.
Those are synonyms. It's not a question of knowing or not. They're the same thing. The enchanted spirituality of African Americans coming out of the spirituality of Africa is magic. And grace.
So, but is that so how do we apply that though in a way that we're not unhealthy?
Yeah, that's why I'm talking to y'all. That's why.
So
yeah, unmute yourself now. Get back in this conversation. That's why I'm raising this issue, because to me, it's a necessary thing for all of us to hear. How do we apply it? How do we tap into that? How far do we go before we say, yeah, I need to put these boundaries in and let God work within this sphere?
Well, I think
stretching myself too far and dying of a heart attack in the name of Jesus, saying God's going to make up the difference. That's what I'm thinking.
I think we start with the boundary, though. I don't think that we go far and then put the boundary in. I think if we start with pouring into ourselves and practicing good self-care, health, and wellness practices, I think if we start there as the foundation, then when we pour out, we're not pouring out in a deficit. We're pouring out from a full cup rather than an empty cup. That's the way I see it.
I went to add to that. I went to church a long time ago, and a lady opened up her prayer, and she said, "Thank you, God. Thank you that you are God and I am not."
Ja.
I use that in my daily
Great.
prayer.
That's great.
And I think that one of the first things that we have to realize is that we are here to serve, but we're not here to save the world. And really put that into perspective, that if I am here to serve you and help you, I have to be in a position where I can do that. If I'm doing it out of because I haven't dealt with my own issues, and so I'm using you to fill that void in my life, then I probably need to, go to God, get on my knees, and then maybe go sit on somebody's couch as well, and work through those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And having conversations like this where we can be open and honest with each other. I'm not saying put your business on Front Street. I'm not saying that, but you need that, whether it's your kitchen cabinet or your friend group or whatever it is, that you can be your authentic self with those people that will create a safe space for you, so that you can work through those issues, so that when you go out into the world, you are as whole as you can be in that moment.
Yeah. So what did Pastor Durbin, you want to respond to that?
I think is the theological argument between divine sovereignty and human responsibility. And when we get into that line, divine sovereignty, that's God. He's in control. There's things that God can do, but we cannot resolve or check out of our responsibility. There are things that God does through deliverance, Red Sea, that he gets you into the promised land through discipline, the wilderness. It's until we learn that, yes, God is going to be God. We're not, but there is a level of discipline that meets these two. Mm-hmm. And that's an area where it's been a tremendous challenge, even in my own personal life, because this weight loss journey taught me that I wasn't disciplined in multiple areas.
That's
And so therefore, is this on God or is this on me? Mm-hmm. If I'm created in his image and I'm created in his likeness, and he gave for man to have dominion over this earth, what am I praying, fussing, hemming and hawing about? Is this under the hand of God or is this under the hand of my authority?
Wow.
And when we start having those conversations, and get into harmony of saying that this is going to be an area where we have to be honest about our weaknesses, but also evaluate, is this weakness a dysfunction of something psychologically, or is this weakness a dysfunction of something because we haven't put the proper structure in place or the accountability? And those things challenge us to our core. And so what I have learned, and this is a gut punch, is that many of us use prayer as an excuse to not do.
Say more about that.
We pray about things. Faith without works is dead.
Being left alone.
Okay. So what we end up doing is calling our work praying. So we think we've done the work because I prayed it.
Right.
Okay. So
then when we get up from prayer, we got to go do something.
Right. So we pray for God to do this. The old Baptist prayer: Lord, stop by the hospital. Lord, stop over and touch them. Lord, do this, and we get to hollering. We want Lord to stop by the hospital, but we don't want ourselves to count our calories. We want the Lord to stop by and do this, but we don't want to take the time to do these.
Sure.
So we send God on the mission trip to do. Versus saying,
we have to do.
So versus us saying, you know what, God, because I'm called and I'm assigned to do, show me the areas in me that's hindering me from doing. Because I'm called and assigned to do, God, show me what I'm doing that I'm doing for ill motive. That's now counter to this. So my prayer is not about God moving and showing up. My prayer is about God working in me and creating in me a clean heart and renewal within me a right spirit, which now makes me in a better place to operate and live out in the area of life. So now, in that context, um, of the model of the Lord's Prayer, deliver us from evil.
Mm-hmm.
Not God, I need you to fix this, do this, fix that. I think that shifts us into a perspective of getting into a place that we're going to let God work on us, but we can work in our life through greater discipline.
You know, we've been in a prayer revival in our church, and one of the things that Bishop has charged our church to do in this season is practice temple care. He's challenged us to be more concerned about our temples, working out, eating right, resting, and things of that nature. And I agree with you. It's yes, we pray. God does what God can do. Only God can do the healing. We get that. But at the same time, what am I giving God to work with? Am I doing my part? You know what I'm saying? And asking God to bless that rather than just putting it all on God. Like I told the class today, God's not going to come down and make up your bed for you. God's not going to write the paper for you. You got to write the paper. God may open the door for you to go to school, but you got to do the work. Right?
That's it. You have to do the work. God opened doors. You got to walk through them.
And that's a classic Wesleyan synergistic perspective of which, as a Wesleyan Pentecostal, I'm not a Reformed Baptistic kind of Calvinist where it's monergism, where it's all God, none of me. I don't pray those prayers, all of you, none of me. When you stand up to preach on it, that's stupid. But I believe in synergism, working with God. But at the same time, I also want to make sure that we understand that prayer is work.
Yes.
Prayer is spiritual work.
Yes.
So when we're engaged in prayer, we're working. And I don't want to minimize that because there has to be this tension of how we live and how we depend on God. Like I use the term, and I said it tongue in cheek, magic and grace is the same thing. I mean, what I mean in technical and theological terms is this: anything from the enchanted realm, anything that is of eschatological inbreaking, is the grace of God in our lives, and it works itself out oftentimes in seemingly magical outworkings. That miracles take on this magical thing as we have engaged in enchanted and spiritual work. But for me, this is so valuable, this conversation, to determine how much, or to begin to at least think through. I don't know what determinations have been made because I don't know. I think everybody's journey in that needs to be evaluated on their call, how God has called a man or a woman to do. Some people are not called to do what you or I are called to do, or in ways that we're called to do it. So everybody is not going to go through the rigors of a PhD to be able to say, hey, I've got this research competency now, and I've gained expert status in this particular slice of knowledge. And for some, it's a legitimate thing. Some would say, why are you spending all your money staying up so late, writing all them papers? Because it is stressful to do so. The reason that we have eyeglasses on right now is because the more degrees you earn, the more rapidly you diminish your eyesight. That is a biological fact.
Yes.
And so the truth of the matter is, to be an aspirant to higher education is to inflict poor sight on yourself.
Wow.
So one must now weigh in the balances. Is God calling me to be a doctor of the church, as he's called me, or a social scientist, as he's calling you?
Or an everyday working woman. And I like the way Ross put that earlier. I think,
I think in the context of what I'm saying, I don't know that applies, because an everyday working woman may not need a PhD. That's the contrast.
No, but the everyday working woman, just because she's not pursuing a PhD, doesn't mean that her work is not strenuous or causing stress in her life. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not.
I was specifically talking about eyesight and all the reading that you have to do.
What I want to say about that though is, whatever work we're called to do, whether it's the everyday work or whether it's school education, whether it's ministry work, whatever, I think the whole idea of this whole Black Girl Magic thing is, are we being our best? Are we helping ourselves? Are we being our most healthy self in whatever we're aspiring to do,
That's it.
whatever we're doing every day, or whether it's in the academy, whether it's being a politician, whether it's being a pastor. Are we being our best healthy self? And how do we bring that full circle so that we are healthy, spirit, soul, and body, no matter what we're aspiring?
The reason that I use that analogy is because to do certain things diminishes one's health.
Yeah.
There's that goes with it. So I'd like to hear a little bit more then when you say, okay, whatever that is. I mean, at a point, we were talking, Gabe and I were talking together. Gabe was our trainer, and Gabe was saying, at a point, he's not going to be able to physically do some of the things that he can do right now as a trainer.
Right.
At a point, he's going to need to be able to sit down because physically he's not. So how do you manage those things, bring those things into full circumference, and yet, you know, operate in Black girl magic and the je ne sais quoi that is African American success against all odds? I mean, that's the question to me that's on the table, and that's the real tension.
No, I agree. There is tension. Yes.
And really, you know, the phrase was to do exactly that: celebrate the fact that Black women can accomplish much against all odds.
Mm-hmm.
But let's have conversation around the odds.
Yeah.
What do they do to make it happen? Because a lot of Black women are suffering in silence because we want to put up this facade or this persona that we have it all worked out, and that we do, and we're always doing it at a high level of excellence. And Black women especially have the worst health outcomes than any other demographic in the United States,
including Black men.
Yes.
Wow.
That heart health is an issue for Black women, and it is because we are under an enormous amount of stress at all times. Like, I read a study that talked about microaggressions, and how microaggressions, you're at this elevated state of stress at all times.
And it impacts our heart.
It does.
Sure.
And then we're also told, don't sit down, that even if you feel sick, you still have to serve. Even if you're not well, you still have to show up for other people. So where, as women, we will, if we see that our men are not doing well, we'll step in and we'll support. We don't give ourselves that same amount of grace. We'll say, baby, go have a seat, sit down, and I'll make sure that you're taken care of. But in the process, who is taking care of us? Because if I'm taking care of you and you are taking care of you, then who is taking care of me? And I have to give space to really take care of myself, and not in this way that, you know, self-care has come to be this social media phenomenon where we just go get our nails done and we go on vacation. No, but real self-care.
Right.
How do I care for myself? And that care starts internally. By the time it gets out, the outward signs of it, we haven't been taking care of ourselves for a very long time.
Yeah, because by the time the symptoms show up, the problem has been there for a long time. A. Chambers says, I've been put down my cape almost 2 decades. I believe wholeheartedly in self-care and mental de-stressing. Yes, Swazette Moore and Dr. Swazette Moore says, yes, let's have a conversation about the odds. Roz Bogle says, take care and love myself. Okay, good. So
I'll just share this really quickly, because where I had the idea to study Black Girl Magic was when I was at the program at Harvard. And I think I shared this at the last in the last podcast. But I thought that the program was going to be online because we were in COVID, and the school pushed very hard for it to be in person. And because of the position that I have, and I had my daughter was still at home at the time, I wanted to make it as I didn't want to disrupt my life, you know, at all, as much as I could avoid that. And so I flew to Boston every week for class for a year for this program. And I flew in on Mondays, flew out on Wednesdays. I was at work Thursday, Fridays. And it was hard. And people would say to me, "You're Black Girl Magic." And there were so many times where I was sitting in the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning and I was tired. Like my soul was weary. If you've ever gotten to the point where you're just weary.
Yeah.
And
you are articulating experientially exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah. And so, so people celebrate. But nobody was there when I was, on the train and dragging my luggage and, trying to hold back the tears because I just did not want to get on the plane just another time and all of that. And you go through all of the emotions. And I think we need to give space and voice to that. It's not magic. It's sacrifice. It's tears. It's sweat. It's all of that. And that is what we need to celebrate. Not just the accomplishment.
And for me, that's the magical part of it, that you kept on going through that you pressed your way, that you cried and wrote, that you rode the train, got on the plane, got to Boston, winter, spring, summer, and fall, and something on the inside, something external to you, something internal, drove you, led you, sustained you, affirmed you, countered all the voices that were saying, you don't need all that. Your family going to suffer from that. That's that enchantment. That's, to me,
and
grace. I think it's grace. I think it's psychological inbreaking. I think it's the Holy Ghost. I think it's all of those things at work in us. And I think that these necessary conversations to be able to frame that within, I think you used the term earlier, Pastor Derwin, and that is call. How were you called? Because I think some people do these things for the wrong motivations and wrong reasons, and then it becomes injurious to them.
Right.
Yeah. It's injurious anyway. But when you don't have the grace.
Right. Yeah. Call in some way inoculates you from the injurious nature of it. Like when I've been on the mission field for a good bit of my adult life, and I've done short-term missions. Most of my mission work is in educational missions. And my wife will tell you, we were in Ethiopia together, and a team of about 17 people. So 16 of them got sick.
Lord, that was a hard trip.
16 of them got physically sick. I was the only one. And the only time I've even felt depleted was this very last mission I did. I just got back from Ghana 2 weeks ago, so I say that to say that grace, that effervescence, that eschatological power, that anointing, whatever we want to call it, framed within the context of how I am called to serve humanity in Jesus' name, is to me the part. And that's why this conversation, babe, is so important, because it helps people to explore their physicality, their emotional state, their bandwidth, and their calling.
Yeah, and I agree with you. But I also want to say, even though we're called, we're still human, and have to acknowledge where, even though I'm called, even though I'm anointed, I'm magic, and all of that, I got grace and stuff. But at some point, I still have to stop. I still have to pay attention.
Agreed.
Where is the boundary? Where do I, and that's why I say start with the boundary, start with pouring in, start with taking care of myself. If I take care of myself on the front end, then I don't wear myself out. I know, and I'm discerning and hearing from the Spirit when to sit down, when to rest, when to go, and when to stay. But if I'm pushing beyond that boundary all the time, if I'm always on and never off, if I'm never listening to the Spirit, even Jesus, he didn't heal everybody. Jesus didn't minister to everybody. Jesus had a rhythm of ministry and rest. A rhythm of when to go and when to stop. And unfortunately, in our Western culture, we have abandoned that rhythm. And that's what my concern is. We have not, we don't pay attention to that rhythm.
And I think one of the things that we have to be mindful of more than ever, in the past, is that the same way that we have access to more people than we've ever had before, more people have access to us. They'll see you on social media. They'll see you on a podcast or interview, and then they think that they know you. And then and I'm speaking to myself, and then if because the way that you operate, you do make yourself available to, I call myself a public servant, and people tell me all the time, you're so authentic, because I don't wear the commissioner hat. Like, come on in, I help you. What do you need? But I can't do that I can do that with 5 people, but I can't do that with 105 people. And so it's even more important than to understand, when do I pull back? When do I have to, put a stop to it? Because if I let myself go, I will go for everyone. I'm sorry, really quickly. One of the my husband used to work for Congressman John Lewis. And I have been at events. With the congressman where the cleaning staff was leaving and he was still there signing books, because he was that type of man. And you see that and you admire it. But you even have to say that there is a limit that as I aspire to be that type of elected official myself, I had to say, okay, there's a time where I have to pull back as well, because I don't have anything. I don't have any to give you. And if I can't give you my best self, then is giving you less than my best self really giving you my worst self? I don't know. Those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. I think
that's a good question.
And I love what you said about, not only do we have more access to people, but not with social media, more people have access to us.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So where at one point in ministry, Pastor Derwin, you know this, Bishop Alvarado, you know this, in ministry at one point, if someone wanted to reach us, they had to go through our office mainly to get it. But now that we're on social media, people are inboxing us on Facebook, inboxing you on Twitter, inboxing you on or tagging you on this or tagging you on that. So you are more open. More people have access to you. This past week, I ministered at the Women in Ministry Conference, and I said to Bishop, I ministered on grief and pain and loss. And when I got done, it was such a deep pour that I was empty. But what made me more tired than the ministry was the ministry after the ministry.
Yeah.
Every woman that came, just about every woman that came up to me after I got done ministry, it wasn't just, Dr. Tony, you blessed me. Dr. Tony, that was a good word. It was, Dr. Tony, your word blessed me, and here's why. My mama died, my daddy died, or my brother died, or I got divorced, or my child's got a mental illness, or this, that, and the other. And I listened, I had poured out of my soul, but then I had to meet every one of those women at an emotional level.
Had to meet them at the level they came to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally...
I get it. I get it, because I was in Ghana and Mississippi.
Yeah, and my staff that was with me, my armor bearer, Minister Juanita, and Sister Ashaki was with me. I literally could not get up to my room. Every step I would make, somebody would stop me in the foyer. And I had to meet these women at an emotional level. So when I got home, we got home, and then Friday, literally Friday, the conference was over Thursday, got home Friday, rested a little bit. We had a thing at the church Friday night. Saturday, I was depleted. I didn't go anywhere on Saturday. I didn't wake up. And my husband knows this is not me. I didn't wake up till like 8:30 in the morning. I'm usually up 5, 6. Ready to go. I didn't open my eyes till 8 o'clock in the morning, which is so unlike me. But it was the depletion, the pouring out. You can call it magic, whatever you want to call it. But at that point, I ain't feel no magic. I felt like I needed my couch and I needed to rest. And so if I had pushed myself beyond that, it would have been injurious for me. And I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I learned a powerful lesson. My sweetheart, she said something, and it was so small, but it was so powerful. She said to me, do you always have to respond now?
Mhm.
And it was a small statement, but it exposed to my life and my philosophy that I always have to be on and always have to respond now.
That answers that should answer Paula Birch's question, Pastor, about in honoring our boundaries.
Yes, and so it's not, and it's, and what I learned in this is not only was it, it was I call it debilitating thinking, because it leads to always being drained.
Mhm.
It was sometimes I would, because I think I got to respond now, my tone wasn't right.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't have the chance to unplug or recharge. And what I've learned from that is we must make a personal and intentional decision to honor our boundaries. Yes, no one can honor a boundary that you are not going to honor.
Mm.
No one is going to respect a boundary that you are not honoring. And I've had to learn that boundaries are not nasty. Oftentimes we make them nasty.
We think of it in a negative way, but it's really protecting us.
But not, it's only protecting, but it's about showing up. One of my issues that I've struggled with is I don't multitask well. So I'm having to learn, as I'm living in a new life, that everything, because I would not put appropriate boundaries, I would half show up to this, half show up to this, half show up to this. I'm a senior pastor. I'm a mortgage loan officer with a regional bank. I'm a contract hearing officer. You know, you got all of these things going on. So everything is just this big pile of gumbo, and you're never full until you learn those different areas of boundary that allows you to show up as your best self. And so that's one thing that in the level of harmonizing life, where I learned some physical discipline, I realized that the self-discipline and the boundaries and just when to respond and how to respond, and giving yourself the space to set up a structure, allows you to be your best self, but also allows you to be off to rest.
Juanita says she doesn't multitask well. I don't think any of us do, really. We think we do. She said, I completely understand. I need boundaries to be productive. Nicole responded to you and she said, you do not have to respond now. Everyone has to respect others' time and energy. All right. And Erica resounded with you, honor our boundaries just as we want others to respect it. Yeah, if I don't honor my boundaries, I always say, if you teach people how to treat you, so if you don't treat yourself well, it's gonna be hard to show others how to treat you. Ross said there's no such thing as multitasking. I agree with you on that, because really, when you're focusing on one thing, you're really not focusing on the other.
Right.
We say we're it's really a misnomer to say we're multitasking, because really you can't really give your best attention. My husband will say this if we're in the car and I'm online and texting or whatever, and he's saying something to me, he'll be like, "You didn't hear me because you was typing." You didn't hear me because you weren't.
The thing I was going to say that I always say to you that Pastor Derwin brought out in this idea of do I have to respond now, is the adage that I'm always saying to people in general.
Mhm.
Everything that is important is not urgent.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. But that's
It
huge.
may be important.
And say more about that, Bishop.
Well, importance and urgency we've oftentimes made synonymous.
Mhm.
Because we say if it's important, it's got to be done in this second.
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, that's an important thing. I'm just not going to do with it right now.
But no, here's what the joy that I got. There were certain things that I wouldn't respond to that I would have responded to then, but by the time I got to respond to them, they were already figured out.
Oh, come on, that sounds
Because here's the thing: people will oftentimes, and situations will oftentimes,
yeah.
draw you into their dysfunction.
That's that. Now that's
I don't have a ticket to that circus, so I'm not going. Again, I live in a place of tension. I live in the eschatological tension between the already and the not yet. And I live in the sociological tension of being a man for the people, But I also believe that any public person, by nature of being a public person, has to have a private dimension whereby they make ready for public presentation. And I don't mean lectures and preachment. I just mean the presentation of the self. Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays used to say it like this, though, which leans on the public side. I would rather, some people, he said, some people work and work and work themselves into the grave while others simply forget themselves into immortality.
Mm.
So I'd like to think that I'm one that's forgetting myself into immortality. But the whole notion of forgetting oneself belies the idea of making oneself available for the long haul, of being your best self in public presentation. So there's this tension that I think a lot of public people, because here's the truth, most of the superlative people that you and I know are out of balance.
Yes. So to add to that, then can we say that even what we call Black girl magic in and of itself is to be out of balance?
That's the question I would ask of you. You're the expert there.
Oh, well, I don't think you're working on that. You don't know yet.
That's why I'm studying.
I don't want to go as far as to say that, Tisa. I really don't. I don't think it's too. I don't think that in and of itself is to say we're out of balance. I think that the safe thing or to do is to look at anything. I just say anything that we overdo can be unhealthy. And so I think there is a place for it, but I also think there is a place for harmonizing that in a way where I can still be magic, but at what point do I recognize where this magic may be hurting me and I need to pull back? You know what I'm saying? But I don't think in and of itself is out of balance. I just think that sometimes we tend to overdo things as we tend to do as people. You know, I don't know.
So, I got this question because this balance word, what is it?
Oh, I don't try to balance.
You know, I there's one thing that has come to my. I'm a musician. I've never been into studio.
Harmony.
I've never been into the studio. However, I've been fascinated with the sound mixing board of faders.
Okay.
And watching sound engineers at certain pieces of music, at certain pieces of the song, the engineer bumps this vocalist up. We enjoy a concert, but when the background vocals get the soloists, the settings changed. There's some things that, so I'm learning to see what needs to be the solo and what needs to be the harmony. And if this solo stays up, this area soloing the whole time, then we're not going to hear and maneuver with everything else. And so I don't call it balance. I'm trying to figure out what's the most important thing now, because the other stuff still got to be the harmonization. What's the foundation? What's this rhythm? What's these different pieces that's got to play all at the same time? But
we began using terminology of harmonization as opposed to balance many, many years ago. And it came out of our biblical studies and it came out of our musical background, because the truth of the matter is balance implies equal weight.
Yes. Exactly.
It's not right.
Right. And I don't want to hear the cymbal the same as loud as I want to hear the
volume as I hear the whatever. And similarly, I think it's extremely important that we understand that harmony implies that every aspect is still important.
Yeah.
It's just that one of the voices is the prominent voice at that particular juncture in the sheet of music. And so who has the melody?
Right.
Who has the singing line? Who has those kind of things. And so I think those things, every metaphor breaks down at some point, but I think that those are good, stronger metaphors than the idea of balance. And that's this harmonizing your life podcast. I think it's so good because it invokes musical metaphors of rhythm and dance and rests. Rests are an important part of music.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
when
very
you're not
important.
exactly. And so I think that whole idea, Dr. David Morrow says that every piece of music begins with silence.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I mean, that whole idea of pace and rhythm and emphasis and crescendo and decrescendo, all of the musical import that goes along with the notion of harmonizing one's life, I think is extremely important. And the dance with God and the dance with life.
And those rhythms of life change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
rhythms of
With
life change.
seasons of life.
I mean, the rhythm I had at 20 is not the same rhythm I have at 60, right? The rhythm you have when you have children, you got small children,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? We had a more fast-paced life then. But as you get older, those rhythms change. And sometimes circumstances causes those rhythms to change. But if we're not in tune with that and we're not discerning
Absolutely.
that and we're just pushing because it's something we should be doing or supposed to be doing or because we see somebody else doing it and not recognizing I'm out of tune, I'm out of harmony, I'm out of the rhythm and the flow of what God has said for this season and this moment in my life. I'll give another metaphor real quick and then we're going to start wrapping it up. But another metaphor that I use with one of my clients was the whole metaphor of cooking a meal. And I was sharing with her, I said, when you cook a big meal, think about Thanksgiving dinner, per se, or a Sunday meal. Most times we don't cook like that during the week. If we're really busy, we may just hit a little something. But sometimes when you're cooking a big meal, you think about you got the main course and you got your side dishes, you got your desserts and all that. You don't cook everything at the same temperature,
Right.
same pace. Some things you marinate overnight. Some things you put in a slow cooker or crock pot and you let it simmer. Some things you put on the stove on the back burner. It's simmering while you got something else in the front that's at a higher temperature. You got some things in the oven and you got some things that you broiling. You don't cook a cake at the same temperature that you bake a chicken or roast a chicken. And so so I think that when we start thinking about our lives that way, and I told my client, if you run your life, if you live your life at the same intensity, every area of your life at the same intensity, you're gonna crash and burn.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's
There's
exactly
some
right.
things you gotta go forward with, while other things just kind of coast. Or as my husband would tell me at times, just have that intentional neglect, because sometimes you just got to close the door to that room so you don't look in there, because if you look in there, you're gonna go in there and start working. You're gonna start trying to fix something, and y'all know how it is. We get in those rooms, we start cleaning, and next thing you know, you don't wear yourself out because you don't just start with that. Then you move from this to that to the other, because we don't know the art of just willful neglect, not overdoing, not over functioning, not over being. So all of this is so important. Pastor Derwin, I want you to say one more thing as relates to your weight loss. For those of you who are just coming on, Pastor Derwin just hit the 250 weight loss goal that he set.
Incredible.
I've lost 250 pounds.
250
pounds have went off of my body. Bye-bye.
250 pounds in the last 3 years. He has lost, set a weight loss goal. I mean, I wish I would have had the pictures up here of you, your before and after pictures up here. I didn't have time to pull all that together, but just go to his Facebook page. He got it there. Go to his follow him on Instagram, follow him on Facebook, and you'll see his pictures there. 250 pounds. But you talked about discipline.
Yes.
You talked about discipline.
Yes.
You also shared with us that you did have weight loss surgery to kickstart your weight loss. So there are some people who have issues with weight loss surgery. They,
Mhm.
they shouldn't use, some people, I lost all this weight and I ain't had no surgery, that kind of stuff
Mhm.
going off on people who did.
Yeah,
So
I got both. I got both sides of the coin.
thank you. So share about that.
So my first 100 pounds, I lost gym eating better, and I call it the discipline round. The key in this example is some would argue are the stairs better than the elevator. It depends on how fast you want to get there. It depends on really you making up your mind you're going.
Mm,
Um, because in any journey, whether you're going up or down, the biggest thing is you being consistent about I'm going there. And so what I've learned is taking the stairs is weight loss journey. The way down is really going up because you got to go up in your discipline. You got to go up in your knowledge. You got to go up
mm,
in your life changing. And no one is going to climb 10 flight of stairs. You can, I'm going to say no one. To climb 10 flight of stairs is different if you take the elevator. So I like to say my journey was I took the first, 3 to 4 floors. I took the stairs. It took me a long time. It took about 2 years to get that 100 pounds off. Now I have lost another 150, but what made me successful with the 150 is I already had the discipline in the rhythm.
Sure.
And so it's the equivalent of, are you gonna you rode or are you gonna take an Uber? Nothing, let's not demonize anybody. The
right.
goal is us getting there. Because I can't say this. I used to be one of the people that would say, well, hey, I'm not gonna do weight loss surgery. I'm gonna get in here and run it out. But the weight loss surgery got me into a new lifestyle that allowed me to lose enough weight that made it easier to maintain my discipline.
Mm,
And so now my workouts, for weight is lost in the kitchen. Your
right.
body is shaped in the gym, but cardio has become my mental release. I can get on my bike, I can get on my walk, I can get on my hike, and that's my time that it's more mental for me now. And it's also more recreational. I didn't know I liked the woods. I didn't know I liked nature. I
Yeah,
didn't know I liked water.
yeah.
I didn't know I liked biking until I got the weight off and got a chance to experience a new level of life.
And you
And
talked about in your podcast episode how when we talked with you, me with Bishop Alvarado, and I talked with you in June, you
right.
said you didn't realize how much your weight had robbed you
Oh,
and how
yes.
you cried the first time you rode a bike.
Right. And now I bike so because the podcast was in June. The first time I rode a bike was in the end of April. And by June, I think it was right around the podcast that I bought my first bike. And I on Facebook and bought a bike for $40. And I found out it's a $700 bike. Now I put some more money into it. But just the fact of going and it's a new world and cycling and knowing different places in Georgia. It's just so much. And the biggest thing I tell anybody about this weight loss journey, I've lost more weight in my mind and my soul than I ever did on my body.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. You gonna
I'm gonna
have
tell you that one more time. I've lost more weight in my mind and my soul that I have ever lost on my body. And that is a weight that literally gives you the strength, the energy, and the fortitude to push like never before. And I like to say this. Wow, it hit me. You don't know the prisons that you're in until you make up your mind you want to get out. But I'm on my after I get done with this, I got to go hang out with my brothers. I'm part of Man Up. It's Katie Bo's birthday. I've done numerous Man Up. We used to do these intensives, and I never forget. We've done at least 9 cohorts, but it was at the 5th cohort that I said everyone is like getting a combination to a lock. And I used to get frustrated because the combination would be 4, 5, 6, 9, 2, whatever. But each year I would get another combination and lock. And I want to tell people that's on your weight loss journey, you may feel like you're not there, but you just got another combination. If you keep getting that, eventually one day it's going to lock. And when it unlocked, you have to remember that it took you going down those journeys. It took me losing weight and gaining the same 40 pounds for me to realize weight wasn't my issue. Thinking was.
Mm.
It took me losing 70 pounds to gain 30 pounds back to realize that it's not just about losing the weight, but there's some different things about eating and understanding your metabolic rate and all of these different other things. It took me losing the weight, having weight loss surgery, losing of career. It took me learning about grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And different losses. I'm divorcee, and now we're starting life over again. And I pastored a traditional church, and now I've planted my own. I used to be in education, and now I'm in mortgages. It's all of these different losses and transition that I have learned that whenever you get into a place that the Lord giveth, but the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord, that my weight loss came from my ability to release.
Mm.
My weight loss came from my ability to say, you know what, it's okay for me to lose. And when I got okay for me to lose, I lost weight. Here, I'm gonna say it one more time. It's okay for me to lose. Because I've never, my hand right now, I got this pen. If I hold on to this and I'm holding on to this pen top, you don't see this. If you just jump on the broadcast, it's like I got a fist, but I'm holding on to this. But in order for me to let it go, I had to open up my hand to receive. And when I learned to open up and be okay with losing, my hand was still open to receive so much more. And the weight loss has literally been it has been my scoreboard to now how the game of how I run life.
Wow. Woo!
Tremendous.
I mean, weight is lost in the kitchen, but it starts with.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, you get into your glory, but even in that, because I mean, I'm gonna go here. I know we got time. It wasn't until I got delivered from food until I realized that my grandmother loved me through food. So my liking of food was not food. My liking of food was me not feeling loved.
My baby brother experienced the same thing. Who topped out his weight at 403 pounds. He had
Right.
bariatric surgery as well.
And
He's told this testimony before that when he came back at 4 years old, his first visit to Puerto Rico, he came back and he was really, really skinny. And my mother started feeding him then, and then fed him and fed him and fed him and fed him. And then that's how he felt love
exactly.
from her, was through all this food. And then she would talk about him for eating so
But
much.
still feed him and still cook him.
And I mean feed him.
Exactly. No.
Talking about him like a dog.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
digging a grave with your teeth. I've heard that. And that kind of stuff. And then feed the boy. I mean, what's
Absolutely.
not feeding him, Ma? Just give him. Good Lord. So
Yeah. And so now when learning that, because it went from, I felt heard. My grandmother would ask me what I wanted to eat. And that was here. So I would see her, she'd be feeding 20 grandchildren or more and everybody else, but I heard grandma ask me what I wanted. And I would see everybody else get what I wanted. And so that was a way of me to get what I want. So then food became my way to get what I want. So even though finances are tight, I'll go to Capitol Grill and spend $400 so I can get what I want. Until now we deal with that issue. Now it's not about food. It's not about leftovers. It's dealing with the root areas to free your soul, that now this is a nutrition. And now, because these are the areas of now with me, I'm now am loved in these areas. I don't have to go there to get that. And it's okay for me not to have that. And it's okay for me not to experience that, because God has made me whole in this area. So now I get to experience it from a whole different place.
See, this is what I mean by harmonize your life.
Yeah.
This is it. This is what I mean when God gave me this this podcast and this whole ministry, this whole self care, and I haven't called it ministry, but it is.
Right.
Um, this is what I mean because we got to go beyond the surface, and it's not just about losing weight. It's not just about looking a certain way or wearing a certain size. It's not any of that. It's this whole self care is not just getting your nails done or going to the spa. It's not just going on an expensive vacation. You know, I, I harmonizing your life is being happy whether you're on a cruise to Greece or whether you're laying up on the couch on Saturday with your husband watching Colorado football game.
Yes and
I,
amen.
I had just as much satisfaction laying on my couch Saturday morning as I did 3 weeks ago on a cruise ship with my girlfriends. That's harmonizing your life. But if you have to feel like you always got to be somewhere doing something or
Mhm.
be in a certain place or look in a certain way, and
Mhm.
you don't get deep and become content in your solical realm, become healthy in your mind, your relationships, your money, all of that. That's what harmonizing your life is about.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for your sacrifice. I want to thank you, Tisa. Thank you. Keep doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I will.
With,
Can, can I share one thing? I know we are
yeah,
y'all past the time. But just this
No.
this has blessed me so much. So thank you for having me. One of the things that we did as a family during COVID is that we started a project, and it's called the Solo Project, and it's SOULO. And everybody gets to choose their own solo project because these are things that you have to do, and you have to
Mm.
do them on a deeper level.
Mm.
So, mine is healing. Healing is a solo project. Um, I think my husband, my son, they chose growth. My daughter chose creativity. But all of this is the necessary work that we need to do to be our whole selves, and it
Mhm.
starts on the inside.
Mhm.
you know and so what I heard, what resonated with me is the idea of release.
Mhm.
We
Mm.
have to be able to release all of it, the
Mhm.
expectations, the
Mhm.
pressure, and
Mhm.
really show up for ourselves. um yeah, and that's it. you
because
know
you know
and,
what? And showing up for me, I am showing up for you.
yeah,
And
and showing up for the me that God intends me to be.
mm,
Not showing up for the me that I have cultivated on social media, not showing up for the me that, the accolades and the degrees and the me get the awards, and that's what all of that says about me, but showing up for who God said that he created me to be. And a lot of times we don't even know who that is, so we can't show up for that person. So we have to take the time to find out who has God called me to be.
yeah.
I this because when you said this, it just jumped out. Musically, whenever there's a great conductor, they work on the attacks and the releases,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and
For sure.
it's the polishing of our life that is how you attack it and how you release it that makes it musical. And
Mhm.
so that's my closing word tonight. How you go about life attacking it, but more importantly, how you release it is going to make sure it whether it sounds good or feel good or it's bad. So thank you for that solo because
Mm.
it's we go forward. That's our magic, but you just can't attack it without being willing to release it in a certain way, and you release it how you need to release it.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Alvarado, will you give us some closing thoughts?
Come on, Bishop.
Listen, this has all been so enlightening, so enriching, so engaging for me. I'm on this constant journey to grow and to learn and to live in a place of harmony. I think that, Dr. Benjamin Mays, the celebrated president of Morehouse College from 1940 to 1968, has influenced a good bit of my life, but he also uh, pushed and pushed and pushed himself and the men of Morehouse to become and to achieve and to grow. And so there's other dimensions of my growth. And one of those areas of growth I get from listening to and being a part of these kind of conversations. And that is how to honor the Lord in that, and not that all productivity is not necessarily the will of God, in the sense that I'm tearing down my family and I'm breaking down my body but I've got the award and I got the degree and I got the
But at what
platform.
cost?
Yeah, but at what cost?
Mhm.
And so I live in that tension. And so that's why I ask the questions that I ask but I also think that we live in a society of mediocrity. And I think that a lot of times, and let me just say, this is a whole nother conversation. You'll have to take this up with somebody else because they'll be mad at you for being too long and mad at me for saying what I'm about to say. And that is because of the culture of mediocrity in which we live. Some folk always talk about on social media, I'm doing me today. Nigga, you doing you every day. You barely made it out of high school with all this great potential. You got musical talent. I know so many musical derelicts, it ain't even funny, that I'm just godly jealous. Maybe not even godly jealous. I'm just jealous of the talent that they had. I say to Negroes all the time, if I had the talent that you have in your little finger, you couldn't talk to me right now. So I say that to say, I think we are talking about self-care in a society that is oftentimes so narcissistic and so self-absorbed that we've used self-care, the real essence of what it means to have to be taking care of oneself, as a cover for mediocrity, for not ever pushing and pressing and strenuously advancing our lives. So
That's a whole other
it's a whole other conversation.
Well,
To make
and we always want to introduce something new at the end of the conversation.
I'm sorry, you asked me. I was content to just say
I
bye.
asked you to give a closing remark, but you gave an opening remark in your closing, as you always do.
Bishop, like a Netflix TV show. Stay next
Right. Well, that is not what we mean by self-care on this
No, ma'am.
podcast at all. Okay. So thank you, all of you all. Thank you all for coming on with us tonight. I see your comments. Thank you, Juanita, Sherry, Dampier. Thank you, Paula. Paula, I shared some of your feedback with Sora Tisa. That's our this is our Sora Tisa, Paula, and I shared some of her feedback on that whole Black Girl Magic thing. Thank you all, Juanita, Dr. Swazette Mooring. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on with us tonight, Erica. Thank you. I saw Roz, my bestie, on tonight. I saw her on there. Thank all of you all for coming on. DeWanda Brown, Swazette Mooring, DeWanda Brown. Thank all of you all for coming on. Share this podcast with your family, with your friends. This will be archived on my YouTube channel. As soon as we're done, it'll be uploaded there. It's live right now, but when we're done, it will go to my YouTube channel and it'll be there at Dr. Tony Alvarado on YouTube and also on my Facebook page. Please help us get this podcast out. And I have been resisting calling this ministry, but I guess God is pushing me to look at this as ministry for our people, because I really do believe that God wants us, that we are living beneath our privilege. And Bishop, when you talk about mediocrity, I think this is an area that we are mediocre in, and that is not living up to our best potential and being caring for the temple, caring for our mind, caring for our bodies, caring for our finances, our relationships, and all the things that it takes for us to live a harmonious life. So again, I thank each and every one of you. You all listen out on Monday. We'll start season 13 of this podcast. We're going to be talking about sacred self-care on our podcast with Dr. Shaniqua Walker Barnes, who just wrote the book. Let's see, I got it right here on my desk. Sacred Self-Care, Daily Practices for Nurturing Our Whole Selves. I'll be talking to her about her book, Dr. Shaniqua Walker Barnes teaches at Columbia Theological Seminary, and she'll be on with me starting Monday for 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about that. And then we're moving on with some others who'll be in season 13 of our podcast. I can't believe it's been 13 seasons, and God continues to give us more grace and more ways to have these conversations. Thank you all again. It is 8:44. I'm going to release you to the rest of your Monday night, and I thank you for hanging out with us tonight on the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care podcast talk back with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. I'll see you all soon.